Happy holidays, hockey heads. We've officially hit the Christmas break stretch of the NHL and fantasy hockey season, but our work as fantasy GMs continues on the Tuesday episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with a Matthews update, goaltenders returning, and a check-in on this New York Rangers dumpster fire. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back inside the lab to your daily source for hockey news, betting breakdowns, and of course, all of the fantasy takes that you need to build a winner. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, Tuesday edition. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas to everybody out there, hopefully around the tree, gathered around listening to your boys talk a little hockey. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Tap into Prize Picks today and make sure you're making a little bit of that loot. Today's episode is actually brought to you by FanDuel, Steel. Start the season big with a big return on FanDuel. New customers place a $5 wager and get started with $200. Is that right now, Steel? We're up to $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 wager wins. We've upped that bet a little bit, Steel. I like it. That's FanDuel.com. Shout out to the everydayers. You know what it is, making us your first listen. We see you. We appreciate you, especially right now at the holidays. I hope that everyone out there is having an amazing holiday season. I know I speak for my co-host on that one, but Steele, I won't speak for you on this. What is your take about this Auston Matthews situation? Because I have one. I'm getting frustrated with this cloak and dagger situation of we don't know what's going on with Matthews. It's frustrating. If you're a fantasy GM, it's frustrating even more so that owns Auston Matthews. We'll talk about the Leafs as well. Mrazek and Gustavsson return to the cage. It says fantasy impact. We'll get there. And Chris Kreider scratched. The Rangers, a mess. We'll get there as well. Quick episode today, but over to you. Matthews, what are you seeing here, and how do you feel about the season so far for 34?
Well, I think it's really just detrimental to his fantasy value. I mean, we've seen him in the past, battle through injuries, continuing to score goals with a wrist injury over the last couple of seasons. Now he took a good shot to the ribs in that most recent game that kept him out of the lineup now. So, I mean, if fantasy-wise, even when he's been in the lineup, he hasn't quite looked the same compared to what he did last year. So, I mean, when you have a player that is this skilled in Auston Matthews, who is supposed to be delivering in all of those facets, all of those categories, shots, game-winning goals, power play points, he's a pretty good, I believe you mentioned this last season, for a superstar forward, you don't really see a lot of them block the shots as much as Auston Matthews has done in the past. So all of those peripherals also add up for your fantasy value. And the fact that he's not living up to those expectations when he has been in the lineup, but now he's been out of the lineup for the Toronto Maple Leafs over he's missed 12 games at this point. It's sad to see because this is a guy that we've talked about, obviously, as a top 5 draft pick for your fantasy league. People were taking him first over Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, all these guys. Obviously, no matter where you take him, 1st to 5th, at this point, it sucks for your fantasy team because I know a lot of people who have Auston Matthews right now, and they're at the bottom of the league.
Heavily invested into Auston Matthews from a fantasy perspective obviously hurts any GM right now. Matthews missed 9 games last month with an upper body injury. He returns, and then the Leafs go 8-2-0 over that stretch, I believe, 8-3 over that span. But we know they've actually been quite good without him as well. That's the Toronto sidebar part of this. I think the Leafs are going to be okay, but you need Auston Matthews in there playing. I know I hear a lot of chatter about, we know this is a Toronto team that is playing for that first round playoffs. Like, let's talk about it when it comes to May. Auston Matthews needs to be in the lineup. And if you're a fantasy GM who, once again, has to get creative here, we'll talk about Waiver Wire Monday, of course, coming up next week. We'll have some options for you to take care of what will be a gaping hole. But thank you for bringing up the lack of peripheral production, and that's what I wanted to bring up here before we move on to goalies quick, and we're going to talk about the New York Rangers for sure. Steele, last year, 93 blocks, 90 hits. this year. And clearly, as a player who's injured, you're not willing to throw your body around. You're not willing to lay your body on the line in the same nature that he was over the previous couple of seasons. And that's what really made him and solidified him as a top 5 pick. Is 1 or 2 a little crazy when you got McKinnon or McDavid? For sure. But after that, I would be fine at him at 3, 4, or 5 because of what he's been doing at the other end of the rink. Giveaway takeaway ratio. You and I talked about this at length, how good his all-around game has become, and that's translated into even more fantasy value that's just not there this season. And you're going to have to get creative once again, because I have a feeling, and this is just speculation, Steele, I know they have the holiday break here. I would be surprised if he comes back and plays this weekend right away. I see him missing another few weeks. They're going to take their time considering where they are in the standings. Back over to you, though, for the goaltending, because, look, Matt Murray, it was a great story. Love to see him back in there. That's the Buffalo Sabres that they beat. And I think still for now, until we see something else, it's Joseph Woll's crease. But this is an interesting scenario for the Leafs that right now it's all hunky-dory, it's all roses. It could unravel quickly if they start losing games and the pressure in Toronto ratchets up a notch, especially in the blue paint.
Yeah, it really can, because you also don't know with the injuries as well with all 3 of these goaltenders. And, this
True.
actually might be the deepest tandem and the deepest goaltending, trio in the National Hockey League right now. And that's funny enough to say, because we're talking about 3 guys who have lingering injury issues throughout their history of professional hockey. Matt Murray playing his first game in over a year and a half. April 2023 was the last time he played a National Hockey League game. So good for him to come back and get that first win against the Buffalo Sabres. Again, caught the best team at the right time right now. The worst team at the right time in the Buffalo Sabres. But yeah, I mean, this is a deep goalie trio that the Leafs have right now, but it's very worrisome no matter what, with the injuries that have always lingered throughout their hockey careers. Again, you picked up Matt Murray, I believe, in both the competitive and casual league, and it panned out obviously against the Buffalo Sabres. I believe
immediate drop again.
Immediate drop. Joseph Woll's a guy. I mean, maybe they bring up Dennis Hildeby as well, who's gotten a few looks this season. But yeah, I mean, the trio, and again, they're really just trying to not get by. I don't think is the right word, because Joseph Woll's doing a good job without Anthony Stolarz. But I mean, they're winning games without Stolarz. They're winning games without their number 1 and their number 2 goaltender together right now. So it's all good in retrospect for this Toronto Maple Leafs club, but it can be very dangerous. It's a fine line with these 3 goalies.
And keep your eyes peeled. If for some reason one of them gets hurt or struggles, Dennis Hildeby will be an option for a stream. Do exactly what I did. You add one of those goalies when it's an advantageous situation, like the Buffalo Sabres were. We're going to continue to talk goalies after the break. We're also going to get to the New York Rangers, because this has to be spoken about. I know everyone in the NHL realm is probably tired of discussing it, but I think, Steele, there is some fantasy impact here that we should highlight, and we'll get there right after we talk about Mrazek and Gus Bus. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Got it right this time, Steele. If you love sports, you're going to love Prize Picks, the best place to turn your knowledge into real cash, whether it's hockey, football, or any of your favorite sports. Prize Picks makes it easy to get on the action, and right now you can win 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Through Picksmas, they're giving away 30+ mil, and when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out, and you can get your money in as little as 15 minutes. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get 50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, 50 instantly. That's Prize Picks. Run your game.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day, especially over the holidays. Flip and I appreciate all of that love and support you show us Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning. Continue to share with your friends and family out there. The subscribe button, the follow button, it's right there. Make sure you hammer it and leave a 5-star review. Flip and I appreciate, like we always say, appreciate all our listeners out there, everyone tuning in, especially over the holidays. Thank you so much. 2 returning goaltenders. Again, it's kind of been a goalie debacle with a lot of injuries, a lot of, healthy 1 minute, injured the next second. Cam Talbot back and forth, Frederick Anderson, Trocheck, all these players, all these goaltenders, but 2 returning very vital key pieces for their team as well. Peter Mrazek and Philip Gustavsson have been activated and will return to action.
Philip Gustavsson, it looks like potentially could have, we're recording a little early. He's back on the roster. They may have gone with Marc-Andre Fleury just to give him a little bit of extra rest, especially because it was Chicago, but he's ready to go. He'll be back in the cage. This is huge, especially for a guy like me, Steele, who's had the run of it in a very rough way. Philip Gustavsson has been nothing short of a revelation. And if you're one of those 0G goalie guys, we'll talk about Mrazek super quickly in a second. Gustafsson is definitely one of those guys that you were able to wait for, and he is in the mix for the Vezina conversation, in my opinion, Steele, especially before he got hurt. 14-5-3, 2.24 goals against average, and a .922 save percentage with 2 shutouts this season. He's 4th in goals against. That's good enough for 4th. Save percentage is good enough for 3rd. So right there, I think he is in the mix for Vezina. He's been a fantasy beast. So you've been patient with him. Immediately get him right back in there into the lineup. The Minnesota Wild, I think, continue to be a threat. They're getting healthier as well, Steele. I think this is one of those situations, though, that he is locked in right now. And as a goaltender that had shown flashes of being a really good number 1 goaltender over the last few years, really just entering his prime, I think this wasn't kind of a hot start that's going to fizzle. I think you're going to continue to see some really good numbers across the board for Philip Gustavsson, a very good fantasy piece this season.
Yeah, and you can kind of see as well as his confidence has kind of leaked towards the offense and the defensive group as well. And, I don't want to put any blame on Marc-Andre Fleury, but in the 4 out of 5 games that Philip Gustavsson has missed, they've lost 4 in a row now, and they've been outscored by, I believe it's 15 to 3. 15 to 4 actually. So they've been playing very, very bad hockey, 4-game skid, like I said, and Philip Gustavsson, who's been unreal for the Minnesota Wild all season long, and for your fantasy team out there. You can tell that the confidence is kind of lacking right now. And again, there's no blame on Marc-Andre Fleury, but when they get Philip Gustavsson back in the crease, and again, it's a little too early to tell, but I believe he is playing Monday against the Chicago Blackhawks. We don't know what that game's like because we're recording early, but we're gonna have to see and this is a good game for Gustafsson to return to against Chicago as well.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I could see it both ways, perhaps if he needed a little bit more time, but I don't think if he needed any more time, he'd be on the bench. So I'm with you there. The Minnesota Wild 4-6-0 in their last 10 games, still very much lurking around there in that second spot and very much within striking distance of the Winnipeg Jets. Lots of hockey to go, but when you have a guy who started that hot and is definitely a key piece to so many fantasy rosters out there, we want to give the update. Peter Mrazek, just quickly. Look, this is a guy that I wanted to give a little bit of credit to because considering how bad the Blackhawks were, 7-12-1 this season, 2.94 goals against and a .902 save percentage. Look, how many times have I said this, Steele? Our show is for everybody, the novices, the experts, the people in shallow leagues, the people in deep dynasty leagues. Mrazek in a lot of deeper formats is almost you have to have a starting goaltender on your team from some of the bad ones. And I think Peter Mrazek here still holds some value. And let me explain why. I know the Chicago Blackhawks put him back in there the other night and he got pumped for 5 in his return against the Calgary Flames. So that's a tough sell. But if you are in need of goalie love, this is going to be the guy. As much as Arvid Soderblom was pretty good in his replacement, he is still going to be the guy to get a majority of the starts. And the weeks where the Chicago Blackhawks, they got the Sharks, they got the Ducks, and those kinds of situations with the softer teams in the Western Conference, week to week, day-to-day streams is where Peter Mrazek falls into. But I just think he definitely has played on a lot of really bad teams and has inflated numbers when realistically, I think those numbers kind of let him down, and he is a decent goaltender, but you just got to buyer beware given that he does play on the Blackhawks, but still fantasy relevant.
Yeah, fantasy relevant. I think Arvid Soderblom, who you've picked up a few times in our fantasy leagues as well, has been very fantasy relevant too for the Chicago Blackhawks in your fantasy league. These are 2 goaltenders. Again, I wouldn't be holding on to one of them as one of my 3 goaltenders on my fantasy hockey team. But again, when your goalies start to get injured, Philip Gustavsson, Cam Talbot, Ilya Sorokin, for me personally, who have been injured this season, I've had to put them on the IR and I've had to go to the waiver wire and pick up some of these guys. I've had Arvid Soderblom on my team this past week because, again, Cam Talbot's been injured multiple times. Philip Gustavsson's been out the last 5 games. Anthony Stolarz is on the IR for me for the last 2 weeks. So goalies has been a hot commodity, especially when you're in a 16-team league. Again, there's a lot of leagues out there that don't have limits. I'm in a keeper league where I know a manager or an owner who has 6 goaltenders on his roster right now. So when you're in a 16-team league, and there's no limits on goaltenders, or maybe 3 goaltender maximum limits, it's still very hard to go to the waiver wire and find some of these pieces. So yeah, sometimes you have to hold on to them, but in these cases, really much just trying to stream and pick and choose those advantageous games for the Chicago Blackhawks and Peter Mrazek.
And hey, 4 wins for the Blackhawks in their last 10 games. Hey, sometimes you got to get nitty gritty. You got to get dirty, Steele. And this is that kind of stretch. We talked about it on yesterday's episode that the holiday stretch can be very, very difficult to navigate. Bets for sure, and managing players during this time of the season, it can be tricky because of all those off-ice distractions. So kind of I put myself into a bit of a holding pattern, even though if you're a GM like me who's been struggling a bit, your initial reaction is just to make a whole bunch of moves. Maybe wait until next week, tap into next week's waiver wire, and we'll get you back and cooking. Lots of hockey left. Don't write yourself off just yet, even though I've pretty much done that for myself, Steele. Let's turn it back over to you. Let's get to break, and let's talk about these New York Rangers very quickly, and we will be back the rest of the week breaking down a top 10. We don't know what it is yet, Steele, but there will be a special end-of-the-year top 10 fantasy episode coming in hot.
We're getting after it. No bets over the next couple of days. It's going to be nice to kind of just sit back and relax. Obviously, no hockey, which what sucks, but, sometimes it's nice to just sit back and relax without having to scurry up some bets out there. But we're going to be looking forward to it on December 27th when NHL is back in action. After the break, we're going to talk about the New York Rangers self-imploding. But first, this episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. The parlays, again, the possibilities are endless with these parlays out here. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast, again, your first listen every single day. Hit the subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Flip and I appreciate all that love and support you show us Monday through Friday. A team that probably needs a lot of love right now, especially from their fan base, it has to be the New York Rangers. I mean, I don't even know what to say about them at this point. They're just down bad. They are a team that is down bad. There's no confidence. Morale is at an all-time low. There's no scoring. I mean, for a team that has Artemi Panarin, Mika Zibanejad, I know Chris Kreider, who we're going to talk about, was healthy scratched against the New Jersey Devils. Alexis Lafreniere, who's been showing promise with his development as well. Adam Fox has yet to score a goal, I believe, for the New York Rangers. Everything is just falling apart for this club right now. And for Drury, I don't think he's done. I mean, if you're sitting out and you're scratching Chris Kreider against the New Jersey Devils, obviously you're looking for something to change, a spark to, something to spark within this, within the locker room. And you sit out a key piece in Chris Kreider. I know he's been in trade rumors as well. Yeah. That's sending a message to me that Drury is not done with all the trades. And I know there's Jacob Trouba's been out, Kako's out now out. Something else is stirring up, and we're gonna have to wait and see. But the Rangers are not done.
Adam Fox has 1 goal, so just
he's got 1 this season.
Yeah, he's got 1. Look, when Will Cooley is your 3rd leading goal scorer, and you know how I feel about Will Cooley, the rest of this situation is starting to unravel quickly, Steele. And now we're getting out of hand here because I wanted to throw this point out there. The last 12 games, Igor Shesterkin is still rocking with a save percentage north of .915. They have been leaving their guy out to dry, and you just mentioned it. So many of these games that I've just looked at, even just over the past week and a half, they are losing 2-1. They're losing 3-1. Really good performances for the most part from Shesterkin and leaving him out to dry in a very big way. And we'll get to Chris Kreider in just a second, but this is really coming unglued, Steele. I'm so with you with the moves. Something is not right in this dressing room. That's clear. But also, when I look at those pieces that you, even already just mentioned, I think at some point, this is going to be a really good unit to sniff around for some buy low targets. I am still very interested in what Alexis Lafreniere can do the rest of the half. Maybe this break, I don't know about the team overall, but I think this is the Rangers this is a complete debacle. So if you're a fantasy GM and you get dangled a couple of players on another team and you maybe swoop in there and get a beast like Vincent Trocheck, again, down season for now, but a player like Trocheck or Lafreniere, who aren't going anywhere on this Rangers roster, those would be the two guys that I think you could get as great buy low targets. So that's one for me. I still see a lot of fantasy value here. I could see that kind of kick up in the second half. I don't know if they're going to knock around for that top spot anymore. I could still see them making a push for a wild card. However, they're still hanging around. The season's not over yet. And I'll leave it at you with this. The Kreider situation, definitely a shake-up move, but he's also been a big disappointment fantasy-wise, Steele. I believe he has 2 goals in 11 games, so it could also just be sending a message to him as well. But I'm here for you. That take on Chris Drury, I think he's probably working the phones more than most GMs right now.
Yeah, only 1 assist for Chris Kreider this season. He's got 11 goals in 30 games. Healthy scratch against the New Jersey Devils, who they were just shut out against. Jack Hughes popping off, Timo Meier, Stefan Nason, all those guys doing their thing. Jacob Markstrom holding it down in the blue paint. I mean, again, there's really just not much to say because I've been so high on this Rangers team, and I know a lot of fans out there and a lot of people that live in New York have been calling them frauds for years. I didn't want to believe it, but this is they were wearing a mask the entire time. They were not showing us who they truly are, and now they are. So New York Rangers are absolutely imploding internally currently. Are they even in a wild card spot right now? I mean,
no, they're
they're just down bad. And again, if it's possible, and it's going to be hard for teams to try to take on some of these contracts. If you would like to move on from Mika Zibanejad, no trade clauses in there. I know a lot of people out there. There's been a few comments on the YouTube channel as well, already sniffing around for Vincent Trocheck and some of these pieces with the Rangers. And again, I think there's still a ton of value, especially in categorical leagues. If you're counting face-off wins or, again, those peripherals, hits, blocks, and shots, which he's still able to get it done. It's they're down bad. It's absolutely it's unacceptable for the New York Rangers to be this bad at this point in the season.
Currently sitting 5 points out of the last wild card spot behind the Ottawa Senators and Tampa Bay Lightning. And look, are the Washington Capitals going to continue the streak that see them start the year 23-8-2? Be hard to say, but you think they will, considering that goaltending duo and the blue line anchoring and holding down that entire squad. Then you got the Carolina Hurricanes, steady as she goes. They're going to have one of those top 3 spots. And you got the New Jersey Devils absolutely cooking. So now you're in a situation for the New York Rangers where you're already on the outside looking in. Players want out. You're calling for the coach's head. Steele, things are going to start to roll in Rangers land sooner than later. I have a feeling, though, if they drop a couple another ugly ones to some Metro Division rivals, it will be Laviolette out the door first, followed by the Keandre Millers of the world, who I also think are set to be in another city very soon. But that's also going to mean, I think, a guy like Keandre Miller, clearly he's not been happy there. Again, that'll have fantasy impact. So keep it tapped right here. We'll continue to cover it for you guys.
Things are happening in New York, in the Big Apple. Chris Drury got a lot on his plate right now. I also want to talk to you about that. Maybe we can have a discussion on the next episode. Some of these coaches who could potentially be fired. I mean, Lindy Ruff's going through the motions right now. Peter Laviolette. We've talked about Andrew Brunette and some of these coaches who are just who have been struggling with their teams right now. But we're going to get to that later in this week. Top 10s coming up before the new year as well. Make sure you're staying tuned in for every single episode. And once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. For your second listen, please go check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. You can find it in the description below. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. From both Flip and I, we wish you good luck with your bets, your weekly matchups. Merry Christmas Eve. Happy holidays out there. Everyone enjoy the time with family and friends. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.